Okay, in this video, I'd like to share with you 10 of the best books I've ever read. I hope this is helpful to some people, and I'd be really keen for you to put some of your own comments in the comments section, because I like to learn what other people are reading. I love books and I like talking about good books, so please feel free to make your own contributions there. Just one thing to put out there is that in talking about these 10 books that have been such a blessing to me, it does need to be said that these come after the Word of God. Nothing compares to God's holy Word. So the Bible is the most impacting book I've ever read. Of course, it's 66 books in one, so that needs to be said. When it comes to people who've written in contemporary times, these are 10 of the best books I've read. So I'll just start with this one, With Christ in the School of Prayer. This one is by Andrew Murray, who was serving the Lord in South Africa. That is an excellent book. One of the best books I've ever read on prayer, where you just dig into what Jesus taught about prayer. The next book is also on prayer, Mighty Prevailing Prayer by Wesley Jewell. I'd highly recommend that one. It's a really punchy book. It's not super thick and it's got some inspiring stories in there. So I'd certainly recommend that one, Mighty Prevailing Prayer. And then this next one is probably in my top 3 books I've ever read, The Complete Works of Ian Bounds on Prayer. It is actually 8 books on prayer, and you can buy these as individual books at the local Christian bookstore. It's still available, certainly here in Australia. Books like Power Through Prayer and Purpose in Prayer and The Essentials of Prayer. Ian Bounds just has a way of writing in a way that's quite easy to understand, but it still has depth and it's really inspiring. So that's an excellent book. I would highly recommend that one. The next one is also by Wesley Jewell, and he wrote a book called Revival Fire, which is really a survey. There's not many books you can find as good as this, where it's just a survey of genuine revivals, not fake revivals, but genuine revivals from biblical times right through until more modern times. I think the last revival he refers to is in the 1970s. This is a really good book, a really good overview. He looks at the Welsh revivals and revivals in India and other parts of the world. Then this would probably be my top 3, Why Revival Terries by Leonard Ravenhill. I remember just pulling this off a bookshelf on the Sunshine Coast, and it really impacted me, not just the contents, but the way that Leonard Ravenhill writes. It's a real confrontational style. Some of you may like listening to or reading Paul Washer. Well, Leonard Ravenhill has a very similar style. He's with the Lord now, but his book, Why Revival Terries, that'll really shake you up and could put a bit of fire in your bones. So beware reading that one. It's a fantastic book. Then a book for men. We went through this as a group of men. We got together, our younger married men in our church, and we read through this and discussed it. Point Man by Steve Farrar is a very, very good book. Again, quite confronting, but he needs to be in the message he's trying to get across, the urgent message to men to rise up and really lead in their families. So really good practical book. This one is the most recent of them, 2011, Not a Fan by Kyle Alderman. And I don't know if you've read this one, but it's an excellent book. And it's very challenging on discipleship, that Jesus is not looking for mere fans. He's looking for followers, because Jesus must be Lord and you have to come under his lordship. I would highly recommend that. It's an excellent book for young people, quite easy to read and quite captivating. This one, 1997, Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire by Jim Cymbala. Great book. Much of it is really a story of how the church he was pastoring, the Brooklyn Tabernacle Church in New York City, was struggling, and he was a discouraged pastor. And then he really started to give more emphasis to prayer and the weekly prayer meeting. And they just saw a tremendous amount of blessing in that church. That book is refreshing and encouraging. And the emphasis is not on clever church growth techniques or methodologies. It's more on prayer. Probably my favorite biography of all time. Do you like biographies? Oh, it's great to read about Hudson Taylor and Mary Slessor and Amy Carmichael and William Carey and others. But I'd put this one at the top. This is the best biography I've ever read, a biography of John Song, the Chinese evangelist who served the Lord zealously in the early part, mainly in the late 1920s through to early 1940s. The Chinese evangelist, and God powerfully used his preaching, really not just to save souls, but to prepare the church in Southeast Asia for World War II and what was going to come upon them. And John Sung was a radical character, a bit eccentric in some ways, but full of love for the Lord and for souls. And God mightily used him. That's a great book. It's a bit hard to get, but there are versions of John Sung's life available as free PDFs, such as the book I Remember John Sung by William Schubert. So you can read about his life online. And then this one, The Heavenly Man by Brother Yun. I did have the joy of going to hear him give his own testimony at a Baptist church here in Brisbane. I think it was 2004. After reading this book, a lot of people went to hear him. And this is a tremendous story of a young man who got saved in China. God used him to preach and to reach others. He went to jail on more than one occasion. It's just a captivating story of what God did in his life and how God used him. So these are 10 of the best books I've ever read. And I'd encourage you to read these, but I'd also like to hear from you. What are some of the best Christian books that you have read? May God continue to inspire us and take us on the journey of true discipleship by reading quality Christian books.